3 men vanished without a trace. No bodies, no distress signals, just an abandoned lighthouse, a stopped clock, and a logbook with chilling final words. Over a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. What really happened on the Flannan Isles? Imagine stepping onto a remote island, expecting to meet 3 lighthouse keepers, only to find the place completely deserted. The door is unlocked, the beds are neatly made, and a meal sits untouched on the table. But the men? Gone. No bodies, no explanation. Just eerie silence. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. It's a real-life mystery that has baffled historians for over a century. In December 1900, 3 experienced lighthouse keepers stationed on the Flannan Isles vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no eyewitnesses, just a handful of cryptic clues and endless speculation. What could have happened? A deadly storm? Madness? Or something far more sinister? Let's uncover the chilling details behind one of the most baffling maritime disappearances in history. It was December 26, 1900, when a relief ship made its way to the Flannan Isles, a desolate, wind-beaten cluster of islands off the coast of Scotland. The ship's crew had one simple task: deliver supplies and rotate shifts with the 3 lighthouse keepers stationed there, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. But as the ship approached, something felt off. The lighthouse, which should have been shining its guiding light, was dark. No movement, no welcoming signal, just an eerie stillness. Concerned, the crew sent a man ashore. He knocked on the door. No answer. He stepped inside, and what he saw only deepened the mystery. Inside, everything appeared normal. The beds were neatly made, the kitchen was in order, and a meal had been prepared, but never eaten. A chair was knocked over, as if someone had left in a hurry. The only thing truly out of place? The lighthouse's clock. It had completely stopped, as if frozen in time. But there was no sign of the 3 men, no footprints leading away, no sign of a struggle. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. As the search team moved deeper into the lighthouse, the unsettling feeling only grew stronger. The fire in the hearth had long gone cold, suggesting no one had been there for days. The oil lamps were empty, as if they had burned out naturally rather than being extinguished. Yet, everything else was eerily intact. No signs of a struggle, no broken equipment, no blood, nothing to indicate what had happened. The most chilling discovery, however, was the lighthouse logbook. The last few entries were bizarre and out of character for experienced seafarers. One entry spoke of a violent storm, one so terrifying that the men were reportedly praying for their lives. But according to official weather records, no such storm had been reported in the area during that time. Another entry described an overwhelming sense of fear among the keepers. One of the men, Donald MacArthur, known for his toughness, was allegedly crying. This was highly unusual, as lighthouse keepers were trained to handle extreme conditions. Then, the final entry. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. And that was it. No further logs, no goodbyes, just an eerie, unexplained silence. The search crew scoured the island, calling out for the men, searching every possible hiding spot. They checked the cliffs, thinking maybe someone had fallen, but there were no bodies. They inspected the supply shed and even the small landing dock, but everything was in its place. It was as if the ocean had swallowed them whole, without a trace, without a witness, and without a single clue to explain how 3 men could disappear from a tiny, isolated island. With no sign of the missing men, the search team turned their attention to the few clues that remained. The lighthouse itself was untouched. No broken windows, no forced entry, no bloodstains. If something had happened, it left no physical evidence behind. But then, there were the small, eerie details that made this case even more unsettling. First, the stopped clock, frozen in time, as if the very moment the keepers vanished, time itself had stood still inside the lighthouse. Clocks in lighthouses were manually wound, meaning someone had to be there to keep it running. The fact that it had stopped suggested no one had been inside for days. Then, the untouched meal. Plates were set, food was served, but it had never been eaten. It was as if the men had been interrupted suddenly, forced to leave in a hurry. But why? What could have been so urgent that all three left their meal behind? Next was the missing oilskins, heavy-duty coats designed to protect against harsh weather. 2 sets were gone, but the third remained inside. This raised a troubling question. If all 3 men had been forced outside, why did one of them leave without proper protection? Did something happen so fast that he didn't even have time to grab his coat? And then, of course, the lighthouse logbook. The final cryptic entries spoke of a storm that never existed and a strange, uncharacteristic fear among the keepers. But what was most chilling? The last recorded words. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. No further logs, no distress calls, no goodbyes. Just silence. The search team scoured every inch of the island, but they found no footprints leading away from the lighthouse, no damage to the structure, no clear evidence of what had happened. It was as if the men had simply stepped outside and disappeared into the wind. As investigators dug deeper, they noticed more inconsistencies, small but haunting details that only made the mystery more perplexing. One of the most debated clues was the overturned chair inside the lighthouse. This suggested that someone had left in a hurry. But why? Keepers followed strict routines, and nothing in the lighthouse should have been out of place. The sight of a chair lying on its side was unusual. Did someone jump up in a panic? Was there an argument before they vanished? Then there was the logbook entry about the storm. It claimed the men had been terrified, even praying for their lives. But there was a problem. No records showed a storm hitting the area at that time. Nearby ships and coastal stations reported nothing unusual. If there was no storm, why were the keepers so afraid? Outside the lighthouse, there were clues near the western landing area, a place where supplies were delivered to the island. The iron railings along the edge of the cliff were bent, and a supply box that was normally secured had been washed away. Some ropes that should have been stored in a crate were found stretched out on the rocks below, tangled and torn. This suggested violent waves had hit this part of the island. But would that be enough to explain all 3 men disappearing? And then came the strangest clue of all. The missing bodies. If it had been an accident, like a large wave pulling them into the sea, at least one of the men's remains should have washed up eventually. But no trace of them was ever found. No clothing, no bones, no floating debris. It was as if the ocean had swallowed them whole, leaving no evidence behind. The more people looked at the case, the more the clues seemed to raise more questions than answers. What could have possibly happened that night to make 3 experienced lighthouse keepers vanish without a single trace? With no bodies, no eyewitnesses, and only a handful of eerie clues, speculation about the fate of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers quickly spiraled into a mix of logical explanations and outright bizarre theories. Let's break down the most debated possibilities. Many believe that a massive rogue wave swept all 3 men into the sea. The evidence? The damaged railings near the western landing and the tangled ropes found below the cliffs suggest violent waves had recently hit the island. The theory goes like this. 2 of the keepers, Ducat and Marshall, went outside to secure equipment during rough weather. MacArthur, the 3rd keeper, stayed inside. But when a sudden monstrous wave hit, it dragged the 2 men into the ocean. Hearing the commotion, MacArthur rushed out, without his coat, only to be caught by a second deadly wave. It's a plausible theory, but it raises one big question. Why were the keepers so terrified before the supposed storm, as mentioned in the logbook, and why were no bodies ever found? Being a lighthouse keeper was not an easy job. Weeks of total isolation, relentless wind, crashing waves, and the endless loneliness of the sea could take a toll on the mind. One theory suggests that one of the men, possibly MacArthur, who was rumored to have a short temper, snapped. Maybe a fight broke out. Maybe he attacked the others, throwing their bodies into the sea before meeting the same fate himself. But there's a problem. There were no signs of violence inside the lighthouse. No blood, no broken furniture, nothing to suggest a struggle. If something violent happened, it left behind no physical evidence. Now, here's where things get strange. Some believe the lighthouse keepers didn't die from a storm or madness, but something far more unexplainable. Local legends speak of ghostly spirits that haunt the Flannan Isles. Could something paranormal have lured the men away? Others claim a sea monster, a creature lurking in the deep, could have dragged them under. After all, sailors have long feared the waters of Scotland, filled with myths of sea serpents and unknown creatures. And then there's the alien abduction theory. It may sound ridiculous, but some believe the lack of bodies, the eerie logbook entries, and the sudden disappearance suggest something not of this world was involved. A final theory suggests the men didn't die at all. Instead, they may have left the island intentionally. But why? And how? Some speculate they were taken by pirates or smugglers operating in the area. Others suggest they abandoned their posts, escaping to start new lives. But this theory has one major flaw. They left all their belongings behind. If they had planned to leave, why wouldn't they take supplies or money? More than a century later, the fate of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was it nature's wrath, madness, or something we may never fully understand? One thing is certain. Whatever happened on that lonely island in 1900 left behind more questions than answers. A final theory suggests the men didn't die at all. Instead, they may have left the island intentionally. But why? And how? Some speculate they were taken by pirates or smugglers operating in the area. Others suggest they abandoned their posts, escaping to start new lives. But this theory has one major flaw. They left all their belongings behind. If they had planned to leave, why wouldn't they take supplies or money? More than a century later, the fate of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was it nature's wrath, madness, or something we may never fully understand? One thing is certain. Whatever happened on that lonely island in 1900 left behind more questions than answers. More than a century has passed since the 3 lighthouse keepers of the Flannan Isles vanished without a trace. Yet, the mystery remains as chilling as ever. No bodies were ever found. No conclusive evidence surfaced. Just a cold, empty lighthouse and a handful of eerie clues. The overturned chair, the stopped clock, the missing oilskins, and the cryptic logbook entries, all pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit together. Despite countless theories, rogue waves, madness, supernatural forces, no explanation fully accounts for everything. If it was a wave, why did the men act so terrified before the storm? If it was madness, why was there no sign of violence? If it was something unnatural? Well, that's a question we may never be able to answer. Even today, visitors to the Flannan Isles say there's an uneasy feeling surrounding the abandoned lighthouse. Some claim to hear whispers in the wind, as if the ghosts of the missing keepers are still trying to tell their story. Others believe the truth was lost to the sea, swallowed by the waves along with the men who once kept the light burning. But the real question is, what do you think happened? Was this just a tragic accident, or is there something far more sinister at play? Let me know your theories in the comments. And if you love stories of unsolved mysteries and eerie disappearances, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because trust me, there are plenty more chilling stories to come. More than 120 years have passed, yet the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in history. No bodies, no distress signals, no clear explanation, Just an empty lighthouse, a handful of cryptic clues, and endless speculation. To this day, no single theory fully explains everything. If a rogue wave swept them away, why were they so terrified before the supposed storm? If madness took over, why was there no evidence of violence? And if something more unexplainable happened, what could it have been? Even modern forensic investigations, deep-sea searches, and advanced weather reconstructions have failed to provide a conclusive answer. The lighthouse itself still stands, its walls holding on to a secret that the world may never truly uncover. Some say the case is nothing more than an unsolved tragedy. Others believe it was fate playing a cruel trick, that whatever happened that night was meant to remain a mystery, forever lost to the winds and waves of the North Atlantic. But then, there are the stories, whispered tales from sailors who claim the lighthouse is still haunted. Some say they've seen lights flickering inside long after the building was abandoned. Others claim to have heard voices in the wind, calling out names that no one can quite make out. A warning, a message, or just the sea playing tricks on the mind? The Flannan Isles remain desolate, their cliffs battered by the endless roar of the ocean. The lighthouse still stands, a lonely monument to three men who simply vanished. Will we ever know the truth? Or will the mystery of the Flannan Isles remain an unsolved riddle, forever lost in the waves? What do you think happened that fateful night? Let's discuss in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.